Is it the right time for you to do co-living? Are you bleeding money? Is that why you're looking for co-living? Not every builder is a co-living builder. Just because they can build a house does not mean that they can build a co-living property, right? Co-living is purely from a cash flow perspective, and the growth only happens over a period of 5 to 10 years. And so you're looking at a much more long-term growth rather than a short to medium-term growth. People don't understand that what's being sold on the table or under the table these days, labeled as co-living, is basically a wrapped up chocolate. Hello and welcome to another episode of Help Me Buy Property podcast. Today we are going to talk about the second part of co-living properties. Today's topic is more about the council approvals, the lenders, the due diligence checklist that we are required, and in order to ensure that the co-living provider or the co-living property, the builder that we're going down the path with, ticks all the boxes. For us to discuss this topic, we have Rajan Sharma from Cashflow Real Estate together as a co-host. Rajan, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for coming back on the second episode of this Wealth Trap or the Wealth Formula podcast that we are doing about co-living properties. I'm going to kick off with lenders and talk a bit about private lending space. There's a lot of lenders in this space. And my experience has always been with private lenders is, there are two types of private lenders. One who are ethical and responsible. And then there are private lenders who are in it for the money. And they'll ensure that you go bankrupt in order for them to make money, right? And so in this co-living space, you're seeing a lot of private lenders entering into this space, offering 80% lending and 90% lending and 70% lending or 65% on the GRV. How cautious does a person needs to be when it comes to private lenders and co-living properties?
Yeah, I would say really, really cautious to start with. The issue is that what you need to really understand and validate that is that lender covered by all the regulations or not. And if it's not, then the situation can go as bad as they'll just not only acquire your asset, but also go for your other investment assets as well. If anything happens, if you're not able to pay your mortgage on time or there are tenancy issues or yes, more so, to start with, you need to be really cautious of who the lender is. Do not get lured on 90% or 80% lending because it has happened in the past multiple times that these private lenders have really acquired the asset. If you fail your mortgage repayments, there are no regulations stopping them to do that. Obviously, we've all heard that the builders have gone bankrupt in the past and whatnots. So if the builder goes bankrupt, they'll ensure that you also go bankrupt. And there's no limit to how much and how deep they can go in accessing or acquiring your own assets. So be very, very careful on the legitimacy of the lender which is presented to you.
The no bank lending space has always been an interesting one. And it makes me cautious. And being a student investor myself, it makes me cautious as well because when it comes to no bank lenders, there is no legal regulations in place. They don't have to abide to any ethical requirements.
No.
They are in it for the money. And they'll make sure that their investor gets paid, regardless of whoever is, they're providing the debt to, right? So you need to be really, really careful as to who the lender is at the other end to make sure that, you're not signing your life away, signing your asset class away completely, just trying to get the debt. So
so no matter, I'll just call it out out loud that no matter how busy I am or not busy I am, there are certain things which I personally look into and review. If a client comes to us and says that I have my own broker, for example, I ensure that I get on a conf call or a Zoom meeting with him just to validate which lenders that broker is approaching, just to safeguard our clients. So very risky.
Yeah. And when it comes to planning approvals and council documentations, what should every investor verify? And before you talk about the co-living property, people has zero understanding and expectation that these are not house and land packages. These are not typical normal houses.
Yep.
I would say 95% of the builders have no idea how co-living works. 95% of the developers have no idea how co-livings are built. And
Even the architects.
yeah, even the architects, there is a massive discrepancy of what the architects can build. And so naturally people think that these are car mechanics and they can service any car. But when it comes to the Porsches of the world and the Lamborghinis of the world, there are particular expertise that is required in order for them to service this. And so that comes down to co-living providers, that comes down to co-living builders, that comes down to co-living designers. And
what houses, right?
Yeah. And so how much of this is a blind spot in the industry right now?
Yeah. So again, I mean, when you were mentioning it, that, there are a lot of property spookers or companies coming in and talking about co-living. I really go back to when we started this company. We tested around 70 councils. It took us like around 8 months to verify, validate, and understand the process end to end. People who are popping up out of nowhere, they don't understand the nitty-gritties at all. It's not about just building a class 1B, for example, but also the land which you are acquiring for your customers need to be validated. Even when we are doing that in the past, I mean, there were companies who were telling that to their customers that you bring the land and I'll build on it. And I'm like, this logic cannot, it's just so illogical, because how would I, as your client, ensure that that land is fit for building a co-living, for example, right? Then we talk about the nitty-gritties of the council. I mean, you need to go through those approvals and checks with the council that whether you can build a co-living house over there in that estate or in that location or in that suburb.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, like I can even guarantee you that they're not paying any heed to it, which then impacts in council turning back when your co-living property is built, saying that we'll not register it as a rooming house.
Yeah.
Right. And that danger is not only from the council. I mean, there are developer approvals you need to check, right? And because our process is so robust, that it has happened in the past to us that when one client brought their property in Mickleham, for example, and really, really wanted to build a 6-bedroom, 6-bathroom over there, we got a huge pushback from the developer. Now, why we got the pushback is what we need to understand, because we ensure there is a part of our process to do, this 20, 30, 40 pointer checklist before we even go ahead, right? Before we even let the clients go unconditional. And this happened with the developer and he refused outright. And then they had to build a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom normal house over there, right? Yeah. Imagine one of these companies whom I bring the land and say, yeah, we'll build it. And they build it, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you will, the disaster is there almost guaranteed, right? Yeah. That the rooming house will never be registered. Yeah. The developer will push it back. You might need to even demolish it. I mean, look at the cost and the risk involved in it, right?
The question comes down to whether can you build it or not, because of course the builder would build it, anything, right? Yeah. And the architect would design anything, right? Yeah. And just because it's a class 1B build does not mean that it's a registered qualified rooming house. I think that's the biggest name of the game. Yeah. That all co-living properties are class 1B houses, but not all class 1B houses are co-living properties, right? And so that 100%. Differentiation is something that people need to understand quite logically. Yep. And more importantly, from my perspective, is that the developers play a big part, the councils play a big part.
Yes.
And so you could build something that the council can turn around and say no to, even after the complete build is done, and that build is legitimate, that's legal. 100%. There's nothing wrong with the build. Yeah. But, the process hasn't been followed. And, the roaming house codes are very different to the building codes when it comes to, especially co-living properties. And they're not just class 1B builds that, any builder would understand. So,
100%. And then you will also find that it also differs council to council. Yeah. Right. So, and more so saying that you need to be cautious about it. Don't worry about it. I mean, we do the hand holding, but you will observe when you come in the cash flow real estate ecosystem that all these checks are there and you are informed. Yeah. And updated along the way that how many due diligence checklists are actually getting taken.
People don't understand that you can end up being in jail.
Yes.
If you are building a house without proper planning approval, without proper council documentation, without proper rooming house registrations in place. Yeah. And what's being sold on the table or under the table these days, labeled as co-living, is basically a wrapped up chocolate, which is not a chocolate, which is right, wrap up in a chocolate package, right? Yeah. So it's important for people to understand, what is happening behind the scenes in some of these things. And so to take it to the next stage or the next question, which is a segue, how can fake or incomplete paperwork, like, missing the approvals or builder licenses can derail a co-living project.
I think the impacts are huge, right? And it literally starts from when you're actually going and even getting a building permit, right? Because the building surveyor will demand for a council stamp plan. And if you're not done that, then, he will reject, and he can reject even the class 1B build, right? Now, moving on from there, if you have not taken the approvals from the council, without getting into the details, there were some things which are a requirement from the council strictly. They can literally come back when the property is built and ask you to do so many changes, which might lead to you spending around 100 to 200K extra just to make it compliant. And there's no guarantee the council will actually provide you the compliance. Then the third impact can be that you call the council and then the council rejects. And I've seen it with a few of the clients who came lately, that when that happened, that provider told them that you hire a legal guy because I can't actually do anything because the council has rejected it, which is like pure illiteracy. The impact of that is that if your house, you would have built the shiniest 9-bedroom, 9-bathroom or a 6-bedroom, 6-bathroom house, really premium. But if it is not registered and compliant as per the council checks and balances, you cannot legally tenant every single room with an individual tenancy agreement. And that's the outcome you want to achieve at the end of the day.
Don't get yourself taken on a ride by property spookers, so-called property investment advisors, or buyer's agents who are selling house and land packages or off-the-plan properties or apartments. Get yourself a copy of this book called The Millennial's Guide to Property Investing. This book is not just for millennials. The title suggests, but it's actually the most advanced way of investing in property. This book will relate to your clients, your colleagues, and other business owners. There are so many property spookers out there who have come out of the woodwork over the last 3 to 5 years. And there is so much misinformation out there that I had to write a book about all the F-ups that people can actually avoid in order to be super successful in the property investment journey. Some of these are really easy to identify, but they are so costly to fix once these mistakes are made. So it's a short book. It's easy to read. It has a lot of stories. It has a lot of examples, and it is a true guide for people who wants to do it themselves. My name is Moxin Reza. This is my story, and a lot of you will relate to parts of this story if you're not born in the riches and if you're trying to build a property portfolio that can last generations and help you improve your lifestyle along the way. So I give you a chance to come out there and have a read. Be kind, stay safe, keep smiling, keep investing, and please do check out the book.
There's a lot of bait and switch that is happening in the industry right now as well, right? Where people would build a class 1B and convert it into a people will build a class 1A and, convert it into a class 1B in order to bypass the council regulations and the council town planning exercise, right? You also see a lot of developers or a lot of builders going bankrupt trying to do this because, there is ultimately a big cost at play as well, right?
Yep.
And the important thing that from my perspective in this space is that if you select the wrong builder, no matter who the developer is, it could be Cashflow Real Estate or someone else, regardless of who the project manager is, you end up with the wrong builder. And they haven't filled the paperwork properly. They haven't got the right insurances in place. They haven't got a DBA. Because one of the things that people don't realize is this as well, right? When it comes to co-living properties or class 1B, technically you don't need a domestic builder's insurance. Technically you don't, right? In Victoria, you don't have to. The builder does not need to provide a domestic builder's insurance because it's a class 1B build. For commercial properties, domestic builder's insurance doesn't kick in. Domestic builder's insurance is only for residential properties, right? And so when you talk about builder basically paying its part and saying, I'm not going to do an insurance on this, and goes ahead and starts building it and goes bankrupt. That's it, right? And, if you have a private lender attached to it, this basically becomes a show.
100%.
And so a lot of people don't understand the direty of the situation where it's not just about building a house and land package. It's the council's approval, but also the council's requirement, but also the selection of the builder. An experienced builder who has done at least 50 to 100 of these in the past, right? And you're not talking about any builder. And I'm going to use this as an example again, right? Everyone thinks that you can go to a doctor and they'll prescribe a medication and I'm going to get better, right? But when you talk about, you don't ask your GP to do a heart operation on your heart, right?
Yep.
Or an eye operation and an eye surgery, or take the cataracts out, right?
Yep.
Because there is specializations required to this, and that comes down to builders as well. Not every builder is a co-living builder.
Yep.
Just because they can build a house does not mean that they can build a co-living property, right?
Yep. Maybe it'll be a disaster. I mean, you're heading for a disaster. I would just say that being a product guy, I mean, our first and foremost starting point of building this huge and exponentially growing cash flow real estate was to do the competitive analysis and actually check what are the gaps. And this is one of the gaps you called out, right? I mean, the two things which I'll call out. One is that these class 1A to class 1B conversions, no matter how good they look, it's hiding from the council what you're building, which means that council can tomorrow come back and say you're not allowed, right? There has been instances wherein the councils have actually asked to rip off the sinks inside the property because you did not take any acknowledgement, for example. There are instances where the council has even banned that co-living property in their suburb, right? So that's one risk. Secondly, when we were looking at the gaps, one thing from the feedback or the testimonials or the Google reviews we saw was that they only had one builder and there was an 8-month, 10-month, 12-month waiting, right? And that's where when we started it, we have a panel of 5 really experienced builders. And that's where the power of domestic building insurance comes in. And you can ask that, if one of our builders actually go bankrupt, it means that, and what we have done here is, because there's a whole ecosystem, another builder will pick it up at no cost. So you're completely, absolutely safe. And that's one of the risks definitely you need to be aware of. So, yeah.
And so if we talk about the property investors' due diligence checklist to avoid getting caught into this co-living scam, I'm going to call it a scam for now. What are the key things that people need to be aware of? And maybe call out maybe 5 to 10 of these that people need to know before they put the pen to the paper.
Yeah, I think we'll start with a very weird example. I would say my mom has gone through open heart surgery and we were looking at a doctor. And my question is to everyone, right? That if it's your mom and then there's a blockage in the heart and you're looking for a surgeon, would you go with someone who has 0 operations, or would you go with someone who is just doing it day in and day out and there's a lot of experience behind it? So before I start with the technicalities, I think one thing you need to look out for is the experience. Ask them this question. I mean, one of the checklists would be, and I'm starting my journey to acquire a co-living property, go and call out and tell them and ask that company that I want to visit a property of yours to touch and feel how your properties look like, right? Second thing, ask them that how many co-living you have built, right, till date, and what's the vacancy rate with proof points, right? I mean, the best part of our ecosystem is that we have the real rental ledgers, we have the rental agreements, we have proof points, so to speak. So if I am saying, Moss, that in Southeast, there's a rental of 330, still owner saying 400, we have an actual property completely filled, right? So the first and foremost overarching fact is the experience, right? Then the second thing is to validate that experience in regards to the volume, in regards to the number, where you're building, what you are building, where the compliance. I mean, the good news for everyone is that you can actually go to the council side and actually look at for that address and see whether it's a registered rooming house or not.
Yeah.
Ask them that question. It's quite simple, right? Even in the call and they're calling you and say, okay, I'm opening my internet, I'm going to the council website, tell me the address.
Yeah.
Right. So please do that 100%. And then go and actually visit those properties, right? There is a way out. If someone is telling you, everything is tenanted, we can't show you, do not listen. Our property managers can still do a walkthrough with you of how the property looks like. And we have a lot of properties, so definitely come and check our 6-bedders and 9-bedders and whatnots. Now, the third thing is, which is also very important, that ask them this question, that what's your process, right? What if the council rejects it? How safe I am? What are my risks, right? Yeah. We touched base on, who the lender is, definitely. When you are called out a rental guarantee, ask them why not for lifetime and how does it work, right? If they are talking about, the deed of agreements, ask them, is there a head lease, available? If you're talking about hospitals or a company, right? Ask them for that real agreement, right? Just to kind of, be safe, right? And just ask them, what's your land acquisition process? How many people you have in acquiring the land? What sort of due diligence you do, right? Do you have an in-house architect team who is doing the class 1B designs day in and day out, right? Because the design needs to be compliant as well. How many builders you have in the panel from a, turnaround time perspective. So if it's over information, you can definitely touch base with us and, on the side. take like good 3 sessions with our, client success managers and our land acquisition specialists and our property strategists to explain it to you in much more detail. And that's a power, right? I mean, and again, just calling out, we have full-time specialists working in every single department in your journey to help you out. And like you said, surgeons. So we have specialists working in every single department, which for your success and which is there in, any step of the journey, you will find a specialist there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And look, I completely relate to a lot of these things, right? How big is the team? How genuine is the team? There is a lot of builder due diligence that you need to do as well. How old is the builder? How relevant is how experienced is the builder? How many has builder built, right?
Yep.
Not just how many actually has the builder built, right?
Yep.
How experienced is the architect, and who is the architect? Is it in-house? Is it outsourced, right?
Yep.
Why is an architect outsourced? Why are they not in-house, right?
Yep.
Do you exist in person, right? Do you have an office existence?
Yeah.
Is it a pop-up shop? Because there's a lot of pop-up shops that are people working from home,
Yep.
and they are buyers agents selling someone else's stock, and someone else selling someone else's stock, right? Are you talking to the actual developer who's developing it, or are you talking to a middleman who is a middleman to someone else taking a cut from the deal, right? So it's important to ask all of these questions as well.
And I'm interrupting you there before I forget. I mean, ask for the relationship, because that is what is happening, right? That there's one company and they have, obviously there's some commercial arrangement there and there's a huge influx. And what we have observed is that there is on the core only one company, their product they're selling for. So the one who is sitting in front of you and explaining the product doesn't have a clue. All they want is that commercial benefit from that core company. So do validate the relationship.
100%.
Right.
And how are you fitting into the ecosystem? What the personal value is that particular company is providing, because the developer could be completely separate, right? So even if you're talking to a middleman, make sure that you don't talk to a middleman, because talking to a middleman is seriously silly, right? When you can do this yourself, you can do it directly with the developer. Why would you talk to a middleman, right?
Yeah.
The most importantly from my perspective is, how long have you been in the game? Like, forget co-living. How long have you been in the game, right? What is the past history? Have you gone bankrupt? Is there any red flags in the prior history? So it's important to understand as to how long have you been in the game and what have your core ethics been, right? And last but not the least, and this is very, very personal from my perspective, does the co-living fits in your overall strategy? Is it just because it's a shiny new thing that, you're basically going down the path, right? A lot of the times people, hear other people and they think, oh, this sounds really interesting, or they get lured into the ROI side of things without understanding the risks. Of course, co-living comes with the risks.
Yeah.
And so does it fit in your, property investment strategy? Look at your overall strategy. And is it the right time for you to do co-living? Are you bleeding money? Is that why you're looking for co-living? Are you going to bleed in more money by doing co-living? Because sometimes you do, because while you might think that you are generating 10-15% return, because you are 130% leverage, your net return might not be that great. And so look at the 5-10 year cash flow and do a proper strategy and understand the basics around how does this fit into your strategy as well. That plays a very, very important part of a lot of these things. Whereas, a lot of the times people just treat this as a product, add it to the cart and buy it as a checkout, versus thinking about it from a long-term perspective of how do you go around buying something and adding it from more of a fulfillment perspective and creating generational wealth side of things.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the power comes in, right? Of, I would say people like you, right? Because you will look at the holistic property portfolio. And if a traditional property fits in from a pure growth perspective, why not, right? I mean, you can wait to get that wealth created and then get into co-living, which is the correct way to do it, right? So that's why, I mean, whoever is actually thinking of co-living, I mean, definitely go to Moss and ask that at least a health check and goal check, that what do you really want to achieve by adding a co-living property in your property portfolio, right? Because you need to get the right pieces in the puzzle to actually build a good self-sustainable property portfolio and also generate passive income at the end of the day.
And the reason I say this out loud is I see a lot of companies who talk about buying co-living in super and, one-part contracts, and basically there's a cost to one-part contract of $100,000 and everything is included in there. And there are major companies doing a lot of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
My personal headspace is that the co-living properties do not make sense, or one-part contracts for co-living properties do not make sense. And SMSF or superannuation, and using that fund to do a co-living does not make sense at all.
Yeah.
Because from a short to medium term perspective, your growth focus needs to be there in super, because that's how you're going to build you're going to beat the retail funds.
Yes.
Whereas co-living is purely from a cash flow perspective, and the growth only happens over a period of 5 to 10 years. And so you're looking at a much more long-term growth rather than a short to medium term growth.
Yeah.
And so thinking about this and not just falling into the scam of, oh, I can buy a brand new property and, I can put it into SMSF and this would be the next best thing, then, white bread. Some of these things are logical questions, and you need to come back on the drawing board and think about whether all of this strategy makes sense, or is it just some middleman, trying to milk the relationship and make the money out of this. And look, in all serious and honesty, right? There's some serious money in this space, right? When you talk about co-living or house and land properties, right? People do, milk, right?
Yep.
I've seen companies reaching out to me and offering, $50,000 comms, right?
Yeah.
And there is an ethical line of, should I double dip and charge a buyer's agency fees and charge something like this, So the lines are quite blurred when it comes to this. And so you need to be really, really careful as to who you're dealing with. How are they making money?
Yeah.
And that becomes a really, really important part of the due diligence.
No, 100%. I mean, there are brands there and big brands there. I mean, that's the reality of the situation, who are actually selling someone else's co-living ecosystem or co-living properties. And for you to validate, like, is this guy legitimate, who is a company in itself, or that guy who's sitting behind is legitimate? And it's like so much confusion happening there.
Yeah.
So that's why, I mean, the brand is cash flow real estate, and that's what we sell. And we have our own, and everyone needs to do marketing, and, and our socials and everything is all cash flow real estate. There's nothing happening where you find 15 different companies and big brands selling in, because what I believe is that how would they know how good I am?
Yeah.
$50,000, they'll ask me that how much you want to pay me.
Yeah.
Without validating.
See, the important thing is this: need to understand that the credibility does not come from the company selling it. The credibility comes from the product in itself.
Core product, right? And that's where people get confused, right? They would have seen that company doing something else and doing it good, by the way. And then suddenly they start advertising co-living. And then I, as a client, would be, oh, they did a good job in this. Now they're selling co-living. Let's approach.
Correct.
Right? But then they might be selling because there's no validation check. It's just money.
Yeah. And so that becomes a really important part of due diligence as well, right? Yeah. If I ask you to bring all of this together, we had a 2-episode conversation in this. Yeah. Co-living, is it the wealth preach, or is this a wealth entrapment?
No, 100% is a wealth preach. 100% huge potential for great passive income generation and doing it again and again, as long as it's at the right location for the fulfillment and almost next to none vacancy rates.
Yeah. So let's bring this together, Raj. Do you think that co-living is an opportunity or a scam?
It's a huge, huge opportunity, as long as you are validating the experience of the company you're dealing with, as long as the processes of the companies are really in black and white, as long as the rental guarantees are checked, as long as that company has a whole ecosystem. Like for an example, they're not relying on any third parties to do anything. What it really means is that they don't have a property manager at arm's length, wherein the property manager can bid goodbye and their guarantees will go away. We have our own company, which is Help Me Rent. As long as the builders they're using have huge experience. We have builders who have more than 2 decades of experience in the industry, for example. As long as they are working with full-time architects, the full-time land acquisition teams which are there, they have the capability to welcome you to visit their properties, right? So it's an amazing opportunity as long as you're dealing with experienced companies.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rajan. For viewers and listeners, if you have any questions and comments, jump into the comments, throw us the questions at info@helpmebuy.com.au. If you have your own stories to share, please, drop it into the comments below. Please like and subscribe our channel. It's called Australian Property Academy with Moxin Reza on YouTube. And thank you for listening to us today. Take care, stay safe, keep smiling, keep investing. This is Moss and Rajan checking out. Adios.
Peace.